Good afternoon, and welcome to another TMDSAS office hour for today. My name is Sulema, and I am the TMDSAS Support Coordinator. Gosh, I was thinking about my old position. But I am here to answer any of y'all's questions that you guys might have about your application, about applying, about the application process, the cycle, anything that you have questions about. We are here to answer those live for you guys. And I know that we have other avenues that you can use to reach out to TMDSA support. So you can either use the instant messaging feature in your TMDSA's application portal. That's typically the best way to communicate with our team. However, that turnaround time is about 2 business days. We have a lot of applicants with a lot of questions who are sending those our way. So sometimes you might need something to be answered a little bit quicker. And so the TMDSA's office hours are the best avenue to have to ask those questions. So let's see. Again, you can go ahead and ask your questions in the chat. We are here however long you need us to be here for. Typically no more than an hour, but it can range anywhere between 30 minutes to about an hour. So just go ahead and ask your questions. I see we have a brave person so far who has asked a question, and this is Genesis. Hello, I hope you are doing well. Thank you, Genesis. I am. Hope you are as well. If I was in med school in Venezuela, do I need to submit these credits? I'm assuming you're referring to your foreign coursework as you're getting ready to apply for this application. Is that correct? If so, I recommend that you send a message in your TMDSA's application portal if you've already started that application for EY 2024. That way, we can have a team member take a look at the coursework that you have, such as your foreign institution and any additional information that they may need to better address this question for you, since I don't have this information in front of me. All right, so Nathaniel, I see you have 3 questions. I'm going to go through them one at a time. I submitted my Team DSES primary application, but then realized I need to take an extra class to complete the prerequisites for some of the schools. 2 questions. Having already graduated, I plan to take this course through an online program in July. So should I just send a message through my Team DSES portal to let them know that I have a new school and class? So if this is a new school, you can actually do this on your end. You can actually go into colleges attended and list the new school that you will be attending. Make sure to list your attendance dates, then go into your terms attended and list the terms that you will be attending that school, and then go into college coursework and list the course that you will be taking. So you can do this all on your end, even if you've already submitted your application, even if if your application has already been sent to the schools, you can still do this on your end. So I welcome you to try that yourself. And for your last question, if one of my prereqs is only planned, will my application be put on hold, at least for the schools which need the class as a prereq, till I am given a grade for that prereq? Thanks. No, not necessarily. So once you have planned coursework listed on your application, and planned coursework can be um, easily as your summer courses that you're taking for summer 2023, fall 2023, spring 2024. All that can be planned coursework, and the schools know that you may be still taking those courses. A lot of times, traditional applicants are the ones going through this process, so they understand that you still have to take your senior year courses. Um, in your application, once you enter those will typically be listed as not yet reported for the grade. Once you complete those, you can then enter in the final grade that you received for the course, and that'll be reflected on your PCR. Right now, if you have those courses that you have yet to complete, and they count as prerequisites on your PCR, you'll see that those have not yet reported. They can show a deficiency, but that's just because there's not a grade for it just yet. But once you complete the course and enter a final grade, then that'll be updated in your PCR and that'll remove the deficiency hours that you have for that course. So don't be alarmed if your PCR has hour deficiencies and the schools already have your application. the schools are aware of this. Deficiencies are pretty normal. A lot of times those can be resolved. And one of those ways is by taking another course to satisfy that prerequisite. So the schools know this, and that's not going to affect you in any negative way. And I hope that I was able to address your question. If not, let me know and I'd be happy to clarify. I have a question about employment. I must enter a separate record of employment each time period I held the same job. If I held the same job continuously, do I copy and paste that entry but with different time period? I think this would be best to take a look at the guidance that is provided in the application guide for these particular activities. So let me go to the application guide. Okay, so it looks like this would be considered an asynchronous activity. So in some instances, that you have engaged in an activity for short periods of time, but over a long span of time. For example, volunteering at a summer camp, you may enter these activities in one of two ways. The first way is to enter each instance individually. So this is the best option if your role or activity changed over time. So make sure your description reflects the change in your role. The second way to enter this is to enter it once as a single activity, and this is the best option if the breaks in between were short, such as having a winter or summer break as a peer tutor. And be careful not to overinflate your total hours. So with the second option, I see that this can be a way to use it for example, maybe like an employment that you had each summer throughout your undergrad career. So you can use it to list the total time that you, let's say it was from freshman year to senior year, and you participated each summer. So you would use your summer hours, and then in the description box, you can list that this was an employment held in those summer terms. That is typically the way that we see those activities split up. But if not, if you're still kind of confused as to how you can list it, or what would be the best way to show what that activity looked like, you can always take a look at the school panels that we hosted back in May. So the schools gave us a lot of insight and information about the activities that they see, that they want to see on the applications, how to enter those, the types of descriptions that they're looking for, the format. So I highly recommend that you take a look at that as well. So go ahead and link it in the chat below. Okay, next question. Um, if I'm going to say the application is if the application will be processed quicker as a reapplication since the course and terms did not change. No, so it's still going to go through the same processing time, which is up to 4 weeks. That's how long it takes to process an application. And you can always take a look at the processing time that our team is currently reviewing processing applications for. So if you go to tmdsas.com, on our homepage on the right hand side will be a blue box, and it'll tell you the different processing times for letters of evaluation and the primary applications. So right now it looks like our team is currently processing applications that were submitted on May 28th. So it can, again, processing will take up to 4 weeks. So it doesn't really matter if you're a reapplicant and have the same coursework. Your application will still be processed in the same amount of time as someone applying for the first time. All right, so I have another question, a follow-up question from Genesis. I am a nutrition major, and was wondering if the nutrition class count as a science when adding the transcript. My last question is that if I had a W in one class, do I need to put this? So I'll start with the last question. Um, yes, you'll have to enter the W for your class. If that's what you see on your transcript, then that's the grade that has to go into your application as well. And so for all coursework information, we always say you have to follow what's on your official transcript. And the reason for that is because if you are a dental, medical, or podiatry applicant and you get accepted later on down the cycle, then TMDSAS will ask you for your transcripts. At that point, you will be able to send in those transcripts to TMDSAS, which will have to be official. And in that process, if we have such thing called validation. What that means is that our team will go in and review all your courses to make sure that you have listed exactly what appears on your transcript. That is why we recommend that you follow what's on your official transcript. And if you see your courses and your grades, those are the ones that have to be listed on your application as well. So if your official transcript has a W for the grade, that's the grade that you will have to list in your application too. For your first part of the question, you're wondering if nutrition classes will count as science when adding in your transcripts. Um, I believe you're referring to the classification of your courses. So I will go back to the coursework section and look at the coursework definitions and PCR. This link is the best section to take a look at when trying to figure out how to classify your courses, what kind of course areas, or how to code them. So I will put the link in the chat so you can take a look at that as well. This is what I will be viewing on my end to help address your question. So when you get to the coursework definitions and classifications, this is the same page that our team will be using to make sure that in the processing stage, so this is once you submitted your application, they review the courses to make sure everything is entered as what's on these definitions and classifications. So this is the exact same thing that our team is using. So it looks like the nutrition courses will be other science. So any course that you had for nutrition, those would be other science only. And this is something that you can see on your end as well. So in that other science table, nutrition is the topic or subject matter that is classified as other science. So that's what you will list in your application. Now, if there comes a time whenever you're not sure if your nutrition was more of like science heavy based or if it was nutrition, you're not sure how to classify it, that's okay. Just do your best. You're not going to be penalized if these are incorrect. Like I said, during processing, our team will go back and make sure that that you have entered everything correctly. And if not, no worries, they'll just adjust it so that it fits the topics that are listed here. And these topics are not something that Team DSCS makes up. This is something that the schools have all provided to us to make sure that we follow and use to make sure that we process all the applications and courses as they want them to be seen on the application. All right, so the next question. Oh, I see y'all have a lot of questions, but go ahead and keep on asking away, and I'll do my best to go through them one by one. So this question is from Dominique. Hello, how important is it to include a description for my chronology of activities section off my application? So the chronology page is simply like a summary page of everything you've entered in your application. So this is going to be your activities, your uh, course attendance, so your college attendance, so such as like your semester hours, what you will be taking in the spring 2024, what kind of hours have you listed that you will be taking at the time. So it takes everything that you've listed and kind of just puts it in one page as like an overview. So these descriptions on the chronology page will only show the first 50 characters, which also includes spaces. And so whenever you run the report I think that's what it's called on that page. But once you import your activities and everything from your application onto the chronology page, it'll basically just use the first 50 character counts from each of the descriptions that you have for each activity. So sometimes it's going to look like it's going to have like a cutoff. Be like a mid sentence and it doesn't look very pleasing to the eye. You can always go back into the activity entry on that page and click on edit, and adjust the 50 character count to show like a complete sentence or something that makes more sense if the school were to look at this to simply quickly have a quick glance of what your activities were and a short description of them. Making those changes on the chronology will not affect the descriptions that you have in the individual category for that activity, as those are 300 character count limits. So it's not going to change those, it's not going to affect it. And even if you don't make those changes to those descriptions in the chronology page, it's not going to negatively impact you either. But if you want that to read a little bit better, easier, and provide like a quick one sentence glance as to what that activity was for the schools, then you can certainly edit that information in the chronology page yourself. So we have a question about letters. Can you please clarify how to correctly send in letters of recommendation through Interfolio? TMDSAS does not generate individual letter IDs for each of the three letters. So I am unsure how to tell Interfolio to send letters so that they match the correct recommender. Does the app service just match them on its own? So I'm not quite sure about the Interfolio process on their end since that is a third party. On the TMDSCS side, all you have to do is if you want to use Interfolio as the avenue to submit your letters, you certainly can. You will just have to indicate the delivery method will be Interfolio. Once you create that placeholder, it will ask for your evaluator's name, information, um, submitted through Interfolio. And I believe that information, as well as your Team DSA's idea number, would be used to match what you have on Interfolio. Again, I'm not quite sure about that since it is a third party. So if you want to get more information as to what that process looks like and how Interfolio matches your letters to your application, I recommend that you contact them directly, since again, it's a third party and they have their own process for doing that. But I believe that would be a way that they would match your letters to your application. And yeah, no problem, Nathaniel. I'm glad that I could help and provide a thorough answer for you. A question from Monisha. Hello, I have a question related to my transcript entry. I retook a course and the original grade is listed on my transcript as a grade followed by an X, for example, BX. I recommend that you take a look at the potentially like a what is it like a conversion chart or like an index to show what your grade means. So a lot of transcripts will have this on the back page or at the front, and it'll list like a table of what they're a key. That's the word I was looking for. So a lot of transcripts will have a key to show what a grade means. So I recommend that you take a look at this to see if they have an example of what the grade BX means. It sounds like it potentially could be a grade of a B, maybe exempt. Not quite sure since a lot of schools are different, but I highly recommend that you take a look at that to see if there is a key on your transcript. If not, it looks like you may need to get that information from your school's registrar's office, so that way you can get an understanding of what that BX grade means. And that way that can help you figure out what kind of grade should be entered into your TMDSAS application. I see you have a follow-up question, possibly to add more context to your question. Um, but yeah, I would recommend that you take a look at that key on the transcript if it's available. If not, contact your registrar's office. Just because I wouldn't want you to put a B and then that be an incorrect grade, that could potentially lead to issues down the line. So just to be safe, just see if you can obtain that information on your transcript or your registrar's office to confirm what grade a BX is. Okay, so Nathaniel, just to confirm, I don't need to contact TMDSAS through my application at all. In my case, I can just add the school and class immediately. Correct. So you can do this on your end. If it's adding a new school to your application, that's something that you can certainly do on your end under colleges attended, and then add the terms in terms attended, and then the class that you will be taking in the college coursework section. And yes, the schools will receive this update that you make automatically and immediately, yes. So if your application has already been sent to the schools, then the schools already have your application on their end. Anytime that there's any changes or updates to your application, the system will flag that update on the school's end to let them know that there's new information, new updates available on that application. This is information that is readily available to them, and they can download it whenever they want. So let's say that you make this change by 2 p.m. So on the school's end, it'll be a flag that'll show up on their end. However, the schools do have different times for when they download this new information. Some schools will download new information every day at a certain time, weekly. It just depends on the school's end, but um, Team DCS will definitely make sure that that information is readily available to them. That's what we do. And at that point, it's just a matter of when the schools will download that new information. But yes, they will have this automatically and immediately as soon as you make those changes. I see a lot of thank yous for addressing your questions. No problem. I'm glad that I was able to help. I'll go on to the next question. This is from Aaliyah. So, if I am currently enrolled in Anatomy and Physiology 2 for the summer and it won't end until August, do I have to wait to submit my application to add my final grade to my portal? No. You don't have to wait until you completed the course to submit your application. All you have to do is list that you will be taking this course for this summer, put a grade for NY because you don't have this grade just yet, but once the summer term ends, you can go back into your application and you can do this change yourself. Just change the NY grade to a letter grade to reflect your final grade for that course. And I'm sure by then your application would have already been sent to the school. So it would be a similar situation like in Nathaniel's case. If the school already has your application, and they'll have this information readily available as soon as you make that change. But this will not impede you from submitting your application. In other words, I want to make sure this is perfectly clear. You can go ahead and submit your application as long as you indicate that this course is something that you'll be taking in the summer and Y grade, and you should be good to go to submit your application. And if I withdrew from a course that I took again in another semester, do I have to input both times that I took the course on my transcript? Yes, that is correct. You have to list all attempts that you've ever taken on a course. Even if you took a different campus, even if it has a different course number, the content is still the same, and it's the content that you repeated again, that you took again. So you'll definitely need to list it under both schools that you took this course and exactly as it appears on those transcripts. So just be sure to have those official transcripts handy and readily available to you so that way you can use it to enter those courses exactly as they appear on your transcript. But great questions, everyone. Thank you all for participating. If there's anyone out there who has joined us just a couple minutes into the office hour, feel free to ask your questions in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer these to the best of my ability. And I did want to let y'all know that if y'all miss this session or if you know someone who could benefit from a session who had the same question as you, You can either let them know what the answer that I gave you, or you can have them rewatch the session, which will be available once it ends. It'll be available on our YouTube channel. It is recorded. You can watch at a later time if you need for reference. And we do offer these office hours for this month every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central Time on the Texas Health Education Service YouTube channel. So again, this is another avenue if you have a question that you need addressed as soon as possible, or you want to receive a question and hear from someone live. That's also another way to ask the question as well. These are sessions that'll be hosted to address your questions and here for you as well. All right, so I have a question here from Chloe. How should I input an activity that was broken down over the course of a couple summers and winter breaks? I did the same thing each time and I'm not sure how to input them. Did you participate in this activity summer and winter breaks during your undergrad career? I think this would be, again, with asynchronous activities, you can list them in one of two ways. You can either list them once and account for the whole time that you participated in that activity, um, and enter in the description box specifics about that. You know, maybe I participated in this activity in the summer and winter breaks. Um, that way, the schools know that those hours and that activity was only during those breaks, even though your whole time accounts for your freshman year all the way to your senior year. Or you can list it every time you participated in the activity. So every summer break, every winter break, depending on how um, that activity makes the most sense to list it as. Because another thing to take into consideration is that section will most likely ask you for weekly hours that you participated. So it'll ask you for your total hours as well as how many hours you did each week. So if it makes more sense to break it down each time, so that way you can highlight those exact hours that you entered, then that can be one way that you can do it. And if you have any further questions about activities, you can definitely take a look at those school panels in that link that I provided earlier. With activities, it's tricky because we can only help you with so much on how to enter those, since those are activities that you participating in, and you're the expert of that. So it's up to you how you want to show those reflected in your application in a way that makes the most sense, depending on what you did in that activity and when you participated in those. So great questions, but definitely think about that, reflect on it, and see what would be the best way to accurately reflect your activity in your application. Another activity question. How do I input my employment if I worked job every summer? Do I need to put it multiple times? If so, do I put it in different descriptions or keep the description the same? So, like I mentioned, asynchronous activities, you can either list them once, you can um, account for all the time that you participated in that activity. Again, freshman year, senior year, sophomore year to junior year, or you can list it. Um, each as a single activity, especially if they were short breaks, such as winter or summer breaks, and just be careful not to overinflate your hours. With the descriptions, the best piece of advice is to not copy and paste multiple times. However, if you are looking to put this in as a single activity each time for that break, then you can, if it stayed the same, I believe you can list it the same way as the same description that you've been having. Um, but if your activity did change or there's a change in your role, then that's something you definitely want to take a note of in the description. And again, I hope that I was able to help you guys with these activity questions. They're a little tricky because, again, you're the expert in those activities. Um, and there's really not one right way to do it and wrong way to do it. It just kind of depends on how you want to list that activity in your application, and you won't be penalized if that is incorrect. So the schools will take what you have entered, um, and just based on what's best for that activity. So again, if you want to enter it once and account for the whole time that you did that activity, if you want, you can. If you want to list it every single activity, again, it's whatever makes the most sense to you. Um, and I'm not making this up. I am looking at the guidance in the application, so I'll link this in the chat so you can take a look at this piece of the page and see for yourselves the kind of guidance that is provided. As there's two ways that you can enter asynchronous activities in the application. Okay, so I'm going to go on into the next question. Under the socioeconomic tab for the household income, were we supposed to enter the income during the time we were 18 or current? When I was 18, I lived with my parents, so I put their income. Let's see. Yes, that's correct. So that socioeconomic page is asking for your information from childhood up until 18 years of age. So yes, that would be the household income based on your parents' income. So what your parents were able to provide during that childhood up to 18. So yes, it looks like you enter that information accurately. Okay, this is about transfer credit from a community college. My degree granting school has listed the course with a grade of T. I have listed both schools as colleges attended. Should I list the course in both schools' transcript entry? No, because this community college is where you took your courses, the school that gave you the credit for it, you need to list this course only as how it appears on the community college transcript, not your main institution. That is where you got that credit transferred. And even though it does appear on your transcript, it says T for transferred. So you would have to go back and look at what's on the community college transcript. So use that transcript to enter your class exactly as it appears and only ones under that community college. I know with since we say take a look at your official transcript and list everything exactly as it appears, a lot of times applicants did have transfer credit from other institutions. However, it's important to note that if this is transfer credit, such as a community college, then that always, always, always has to be entered as it appears as a community college, not your main institution. For foreign coursework, that can get a little tricky. So if you have specific questions about foreign coursework or study abroad, as it is in regards to how those courses are appearing on your main institution, send us a message in your TMDSAS application portal. Let us know if you have questions about that, and we can address those there. But the good rule of thumb is that if you took courses at a community college and that later got transferred onto your main institution transcript, then you have to use the community college transcript to list the course exactly as it appears on that community college transcript. And this is the case a lot of times for dual credit, or if you if you got your associates and you started at a community college and you took all those courses and then you transferred to a four-year university, a lot of the times those transcripts will show all those courses that you took at a community college and it'll appear as transfer credit. Don't list it under your main institution. So great question. Another one that we have is how would we input special dual degree programs? For example, a master's degree earned at the same institution, or sorry, it's earned at the same time as a bachelor's, especially if some courses count for both degrees. All right, so I'm trying to visualize how this would look like on the application, but it sounds like this potentially was maybe you were in school for 5 years, and you were you after the 5 years, you basically obtain your bachelor's and your master's degree. Is that correct? Let me know. But if so, it sounds like let's see, you could potentially. Well, it depends on your courses. So let me take a look at your question again. Hmm. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I think this would be something that we would have to take a look at to see like what you currently have on your application. So send us a message in your TMDSAS application portal. I'm sure you've already started part of that and already entered like the colleges that you attended. So ask your question in there so that way we can have a team member take a look at that. Anytime that you send a message in your portal, it is connected to your application. So it allows our team to be able to quickly go to the application and provide the best guidance. So in this case, a better visual of what that might look like, um, depending on your coursework and the amount. Okay, it looks like you had this in 4 years. Well, that's really cool that it was accelerated and you were able to obtain both degrees in those 4 years. But yeah, go ahead and send a message just because I want to make sure you get the proper guidance on how to enter that in your application. Sometimes I wish questions could be just a black and white answer, but sometimes it just depends on the context. Schools are different. We have applicants from multiple schools, various states, and everyone does it differently. So, yeah, I just want to make sure you get the right information on how to enter that in your application. All right, so it looks like we already addressed this one. We are at around 37 minutes into this office hour. If you have any last minute questions, go ahead and insert those into the chat. If not, in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys of if you guys have already submitted your application, it does not all end when you submit. So you do have to still keep up with your application, still like maintain it, still keep in contact with us as our team could potentially reach out to you for important information and or notices. So after you submit your application, I definitely recommend that you take a look at the after submitting page in the application guide. The reason for this is because once you submit, of course, there is that processing time that I mentioned earlier. Your application will take up to 4 weeks to process. That means that the application is still at our office before it is sent out or transmitted to the schools. So we do have information about processing times for the application, letters of evaluation, scores, important information about transcripts, information on how to check the status of your scores and your letters. You can do this on your own. You don't have to call us and ask for us to check that information for you because that is available to you on your end. We also have information about once your application is sent out to the school, so what we call it transmitted. So at that point, you will have access to your PCR, and that is your prerequisite coursework report. It's very important that you take a look at that upon your application being sent to the schools. You'll have access to that, and there's information on that page about what that is, what to look out for, and frequently asked questions about the PCR. There's also information about secondary applications. As the secondary applications are managed by the schools themselves. So if you have specific questions about their questions, their application, the portal, all that is best if you contact the schools directly. But we just have simple information as to like what school requires a secondary, how much it costs, how they will contact you about those. Some schools require Casper, so we have brief information about that. Information about making changes to your application after you submit. The biggest change, like I said, is maintaining those courses and grades. You always want to make sure that you update that information if there's any changes to what you had originally entered in your application. There's information on how to make those changes on your end, and there's also information as to what changes can be made after you submit. Right off the bat, you cannot make any changes to your essays or your activities. Lastly, there is information about the TMDSAS match. This is only applicable to our Texas resident medical applicants, but that doesn't come until later on in the cycle, um, at the end of the fall, going into the spring. So if you want to take a look at that, you can, but if it doesn't make sense, no worries. There is still time until then. So yeah, just useful information. Other frequently asked questions are also listed on that page. And it's just a great way to kind of have a brief overview of what to expect after your application was submitted and just other things that you should keep on your radar. But I see that we don't have any additional questions. I want to thank you all for joining in and asking these really great questions that are always asked from our applicants via phones and the instant messages in the portal. And again, we'll have another session next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central Time on the same channel. So we'll see you all then. Thank y'all. Have a great day.